Okay, we're at Leeds Town Council meeting on Wednesday, August 8th, 2012. It's 7:20, we're a little bit late. Our work meeting went a little longer than we'd anticipated. So starting off, I'll lead us in the pledge. Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, starting with Frank. Yes, Frank.
Andrew Roy.
Alan Roberts.
Nate Blake. Joe Allen.
Do I have any declaration of abstentions by any council members for what's on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, we're looking at the consent agenda included minutes from July 25th. We are not going to include those. Those are not ready to approve. So what I'm looking for is a motion to simply approve tonight's agenda.
So moved. Second that.
I have a question, Mayor.
Okay.
If we are asking the people presenting, and I understand that one of the groups needs more time, so if we approve this consent agenda, that would mean we lock in the times that we have?
We're not going to lock that in real solid. I would ask that people try to stay within that time frame. More than anything, it's a tool to help us to try and plan the length of items that are on there. Some may go less. If some need to go over a moderate amount,
Then I
an
will
extensive amount, I would
Then I
ask.
will make a motion for the trap door.
Okay. So I have a motion by Joe Allen and a second by Nate Blake to accept tonight's agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
The only announcement that I had was the county fair officially opens tonight. And Leeds does have a princess that's down there, thanks to Gene Bill covering for me and or potentially Frank. I had him roped into that at one moment. She's taking care of our obligations as far as the Leeds go at the county fair for the opening.
Does she have a name?
Yes, she does, absolutely. And I know her by Steve Lewis's daughter. I don't know her first name now.
Miss McKay.
Katie, there you go. McKay.
Great, congratulations to her and the family. All the waiting
Thank you, Katie.
because it's involved with race.
There were no names on the citizen comment list then.
That's correct. I knew that. The visible pen would work.
Excellent. Okay, we'll go right into our regular meeting, and I'm going to be a little informal on some of this. I had some discussion we're on item number 8, just over the phone with Nancy Williams. Nancy, I'll turn this one over to you or whomever you have here to present this item to us. Believe me, I can go to sleep without reading that.
I know. That actually, I'm Nancy Harrison-Williams, and I'm here to discuss the possibility of what is happening to many of the small towns. I was asked to join a committee which was on the helicopter and hurricane that has caused such a catastrophic impact to the area that Leeds needs to prepare. because this is ongoing with small towns. If you read the spectrum, a lot of people don't get the hard copies anymore. But I'm going to go over just a few, because it highlights. If you didn't write the article, yeah, that would have been fun. Basically, what happened was, there is a helicopter business called Zion Ford Helicopters. It is currently operating at 1550 West State Street, which is Highway 9. It's approximately located 50 feet from the closest residence, 150 feet from the bus stop, and it's across the street from my business. And one of the impact, it leaves and takes off approximately 20 times a day. If you read I'm just going to read the article because it sort of breaks it down to a really logical, progressive way. But I was asked by the City Council of Hurricane to be on a committee, and there were 6 of us. Don Fraser, who represented the engineer and the resident, Lavinia Silva, who is a computer programmer, Dennis Silva, who is BLM, Leonard, I can say his name, he's an aeronautical engineer, and missing somebody? Don, Dennis, no, that was it. And we put together this for the town of Hurricane, which breaks down the different impacts of businesses. Helicopters have a way with FAA. It came under what is considered sightseeing. The FAA does not govern any type of sightseeing helicopters. It's a very interesting law because if it's a sightseeing rotary aircraft, it has to take off and land at the same location. It can carry as many people as it wants. It can't go further than 25 miles from the takeoff and landing. It cannot pick up somebody and then land somewhere else and drop them off. Those are the criteria of a site or a tour, which is pretty general, and they do not demand anything from them but a license. Therefore, any one of us, if we had a pilot's license, could come in and start a business. Well, the impact of having a helicopter taking off and landing is catastrophic if you're in an area. But it has caused a lot of problems, and it made front page, which I was quite amazed at. But 3 months after a helicopter touring business opened, just 40 feet from her home, Lisa Kinnick is still a little shocked. 6 days each week, anytime from 9 to 7 p.m., she and her neighbors say they can expect noise from a helicopter to rattle their windows while Kinnick and her son deal with dust and gasoline fumes produced by the business. And with the business owner struggling to move to more suitable location, and city leaders seemingly paralyzed by the possible legal. Thank you. I got a little dyslexic in my long day of stepping in. Kernick said she isn't sure what to expect now. It's scary. It's really scary. Just the noise and the thought of one day it will crash into my living room. What is happening to small towns, and I was also involved in the Tokerville and Springville, is these helicopter places are coming in under the FAA laws. FAA is expecting the city and the county to make their own ordinances. And in the Virgin one meeting, there was a group coming in to do the same exact thing. The Virgin town council just said no. That was it, no. It disrupts our type of life. We don't want helicopters coming in, taking off, and doing things. The same thing in Springville, the same thing in Tocqueville. Unfortunately, in Hurricane, to get a city license, it only took the clerk and the attorney who gave him a license. Helicopters under what helicopters are listed as are recreation. And so the helicopter was a recreation. It came under recreation commercial. So it is taking off and landing multi-times a day. I met with the FAA and also Paul Cox, who has owned the helicopter tour business out of Rice for 30 years. He came down and evaluated this visually because he's on several boards in the state of Utah. And he was appalled because there are nothing that is structured for different things. And to be specific enough, it's almost hysterical that somebody would allow a helicopter business to take off and land in Hurricane with this wind that we have. The helicopter is way underpowered for what it is, but there's no laws to stop it. They will come here, that's a given. And there are certain things that a town can do to prevent things from occurring. And one is called, it's the state local government strategies to prevent new non-compatible development. And in this book, we break it down from noise to pollution to health, safety, the type of living standard that is jeopardized by different occupations, or different businesses. This one just happened to have been a helicopter, and Leeds needs to incorporate some type of ordinance that is specific enough that it can't slip under the door. There are examples in this that are broken down. One is land use and development controls based upon a well-worked-out compatible land use plan is among the most potent and affordable of all the compatible strategies. This is particularly so in still developing areas. The exercise of these land use and development controls is usually within the authority of local or county government rather than the business owner. Even when and this is referring again to a helicopter, when an airport is operated by the same governmental body which exercises these controls, this is often the little recognition of the action based on the needs in the critical area. There was no need for a tour business to be taking off from Highway 9. It's a matter of not if, but when it's going to crash. And the accidents have already increased, but the town council was afraid of being sued. Unfortunately, they didn't look at the other side. The other side is the multi-residents that are now joining together to sue the council and the city. The helicopter pilot, I met him before he opened, very cordial. He lives in Ivins. He doesn't own the helicopter. He doesn't own his house. He doesn't own his car. He's basically the great American, you know. He owns nothing. And the city of Hurricane also does not require that any businesses carry any liability. So when he's up in the air, there is no liability if there is an accident. If something happens, you can imagine what's going to happen to the city of Hurricane. There is an imposed knowledge that if the city gave a license to somebody, they had to have checked it out, right? They don't. And I don't know if Leeds requires insurance for different businesses, but, you know, here's a helicopter that's likely to crash. It really is. And people on Highway 9, they're coming in, they're touring, great, $29.95, which is a tour that takes you up over my business, up to the end of Main Street, straight down Highway 9 and out. It's a 4-minute ride. And if it crashes, he walks away,
He's lucky.
you know. And so I would urge the city of Leeds to really identify some of these areas. Everything is pretty well planned out. If you need help with the ordinances or anything like that, do we have anything on helicopters or different recreational?
We do not have anything pertaining to helicopters.
It's an interesting, I understand it. You just don't expect a helicopter to appear 50 feet from your house or something. It's just, it's like, I compare it to somebody going out on a highway and playing marbles. There isn't a rule that says don't go out on an interstate or a state road and play marbles. There's no law. You can do it, you know, but the accident, the death, the thing is going to happen, and that is unpreventable. Back to Paul Cox, he said the helicopter and their specifics on this helicopter is a tinker toy. It doesn't have the power to pull out of the wind gusts that occur. Agree? Okay. And so, if there needs to be help on this, I'd be happy to pass on what we're doing in Hurricane, and not under the negative part of suing the town, but trying to get ordinances in place to protect. And there's another uproar because the mayor trying, you know, to foresee that the worst is going to happen, has put the town in jeopardy by saying, well, we'll help you find a location.
You said that it was 150 feet from bus stop?
That's incorrect.
Okay, because
That-
in the
yeah, there's
newspaper
several
article it says
incorrect
half
things.
mile.
Right. It's less than, if you're familiar with, well, it's 1550. The bus stop is right by the mailboxes. The mailboxes are 35 feet from the chain link fence. There is a 6-foot chain link fence around where the helicopter takes off and lands. It's less than 150 feet.
Wow, okay.
And there's also, the FAA did not approve, because reading that, he's on a temporary, and the FAA only approves that he has a license. If he was a carrier, that means picked up, dropped off, or if they had any way of judging, he'd have to be doing a blood test weekly for drugs. It's very, stark on what they require. But because he goes under the sightseeing, it's not governed.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Any other questions, council?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now, when I read this Sunday, I wondered, what was the city of Hurricane thinking, and how did this happen?
Exactly.
How did it fall through? And so thank you for that explanation of, yeah, just like the business
They
license
just go
period.
around and they find the loopholes.
We do already
If they're not running this.
have
Okay, item number 9. I'm gonna pick on Dave Sterling on this one, and whomever Dave has brought to present this issue to us.
You're supposed to come up here with you, introduce me, but I guess you won't.
He's resting. been working for 3 days solid, no sleep.
It's pretty hard work here, so. I'm Ty Palmer with the Utah Association of Conservation Districts. I'm a staff member for 7 local conservation districts who are subdivision of state government. They're locally elected just like you folks, like the school board. They're elected to a 4-year term. They're all landowners, farmer ranchers types in Washington County. We have one elected supervisor here tonight that is on my board, Lloyd Jessup. Raise your hand, Lloyd. He's one of our elected board members. Lloyd lives in Hurricane. I'm a staff member for this board. And I was asked by, we meet once a month in St. George. And I was asked by Mr. Sterling, who's one of our local cooperators, who we as a conservation district help landowners improve their land as far as improving their resource base, soil, water, irrigation improvements, things like that. Dave approached us to come tonight to talk a little bit about an ordinance that we've helped the counties put in place in my 5-county area here that I work in. Dave's also one of our long-standing cooperators that it's come to us that we've helped put in a farm plan on his farm down here in Leeds. We helped improve his irrigation system for his watermelon crops quite a few years ago and improved the production of that farm. Anyway, as a conservation district, we helped Washington County back in the mid-90s implement what's called the Washington County Ag Protection Area Ordinance. And I believe that ordinance is ordinance number 600 in the county. Back in the mid-90s, Senator Leonard Blackham out of Moroni at the time, he's now the Utah Commissioner of Agriculture and Food. He was a senator and introduced a Senate bill in the legislature, Senate Bill 227, about 94. It was passed into state law. And what it did is it set up the opportunity for every county in the state to implement agriculture protection areas. An ordinance which basically a farmer can come in that's in the county, could sign up for it, and he could be protected from nuisance lawsuits and also potential threatening development, things like that. This ordinance has been passed in every county, I believe. It's been implemented in all 5 of my counties. I work in the 5-county area, 5-county AOG area. One of the first counties that implemented this was Washington County. Anyway, this ordinance is basically, it kind of protects a landowner from nuisance type lawsuits as long as he's producing in a normal manner. Such as sometimes farmers, when development occurs in some of our communities, development moves out into the farms mainly. And sometimes those farmers have a hard time baling hay when they a little early in the morning or late at night. Sometimes they have pumps running, got a diesel motor. Sometimes you get flies associated with the livestock. You have those kinds of things. People like to move into ag areas. I think it's pretty good, but after a while they can see some of the problems, so, and sometimes they complain. And this protects them from that. So basically that's how it was set up. So this protection area is a county ordinance. However, they tried to get this implemented within the community, let the municipalities come into play. But at the last minute in this law, it got thrown out by the League of Cities and Towns. But since then, the ordinance the law has been expanded, and municipalities can have the opportunity to implement an ordinance based on their needs. And sometimes they have used the counties as an example, and they've tailored it to fit the town or the city. There's been several cities that's implemented it. Two in my zone, City of Hurricane. They implemented it several years ago. I helped them develop the ordinance. And the city of Cambridge has implemented this ordinance. Many of the cities up around the outlying cities around Logan have took advantage of this. Millville was one of the first ones. Any folks been up to Cache County, you can see the development going on up there, and there's probably some of the most prime agriculture farmlands in the state of Utah, as far as prime farmland goes. And many of those little towns, Richmond, Millville, Wellsville, they saw a need to protect their farming, not as just as an economic base, but a cultural, social base also. You know, that's what made those towns what they are, and they wanted to protect that farming base and that atmosphere. And so they implemented this ordinance also. It's a very flexible ordinance. That's the nice thing about this. It's not a save-all to protect agriculture, but it is a tool to put in the toolbox to save open space and farmland and to help the farmer. You know, there's a lot of odds against the farmer these days. Encroaching development and urban storms makes it even harder for a guy to farm. Mr. Sterling has one of the most economic viable farms in Washington County. There's going to be, we can probably get where we can count them on two hands, you know, as far as sustainable farming goes. I know many of you have enjoyed cantaloupes and watermelon, corn, and peaches. One of our long-standing board members was Bud Scow, who died just a couple of years ago. He's the one that taught David how to grow peaches. And anyway, he would like to have the opportunity to maybe implement this ordinance. A landowner, once a landowner gets into this, he's into it for, I think it's good for 20 years, then it comes up for review again. But he can jump out anytime he wants. There is a fee associated. There's a fee schedule with the city clerk, the county recorder went through, and I have a list of all the fees, recording fees. It's recorded. There's a public notice period and things like that. And then there's a fee associated that he can come in and pay the town of Leeds to become an ag protection area. But it would be up to the city council to adopt this ordinance.
I'm trying to find that code. I know you said Senate Bill 227 that Leonard Black
Right.
wrote, and but I'm finding under Utah Code.
It's Title 17, Chapter 41.
Oh, Chapter 17, and it's under Title 3 or 4.
I'm not sure about that.
So it'd be Title Chapter 17.
Title 17. That's the county,
Okay.
county land use.
Yeah.
1741.
Yep, Chapter 41. You'll find that ag protection area law.
Okay, so I was trying to pick it up here.
Anyway, it's just something that you guys can take a look at. You know, if it fits the town of Leeds, if you feel like it's important to protect your bona fide agriculture, it's not something that's locked in. It's something the landowner can definitely get out of if he wants to, but it's something that he could use as a tool to help protect his operation while he wants to still be a bona fide farmer, rancher. So I do have a handout if you'd like me to leave it to you, and some notices, and also this ordinance, once it's set up, you're the legislative body for this ordinance. You're the ones that say yay or nay. But what you have is you have two boards to assist you. You have the Town Planning and Zoning Commission. I guess you have the Planning and Zoning Board.
Yes.
They would be your help for the zoning part of it. And also, on the other hand, you have an Agriculture Advisory Board, which, in all the cases I've worked with, is our conservation district, because they are bona fide landowners in the county. So you as a legislative body would have these two boards, and they would give you input and recommendations as to their recommendations when somebody comes in and applies for one.
So you're not just talking about nuisance issues, you're talking about uses that are going to be recorded at the county on properties that they like to come in.
They would be recorded as an ag protection area that would give them protection against nuisance. And also, there's some other protections that goes along with it. It protects the farmer from unreasonable restrictions from state and local agencies on farm structures and practices. It also serves as a notice, which is kind of nice when a development comes in next to a farm. It serves as a notice to prospective land purchasers and developers that they are purchasing land next to a protected farming operation. And that they need to expect that there's going to be no farming operations going on right there. And it also protects lands from zoning designations from political subdivisions and all land, unless all landowners within the APA provide written approval. They can provide written approval for different subdivisions if they feel like it's okay.
I couldn't get it to download, but typically in environmental trespassing aspects, nuisance is one of the issues, and sometimes there's neglect or negligence or.
Can you turn your mic up?
Yeah, my mic's on, so does that help? So, does it address any of the other environmental aspects, other than just nuisance? In that bill, if you know?
Yes.
You know what I'm referring to, because if somebody's land was flooding onto another person, you either sue them for trespassing or the.
Yeah, it does not do that. There's other laws in the State Department of Environmental Quality, Division of Water Quality.
Basically, what it does is that if they are cattle raising and people are irritated by the odor of the nuisance of the manure, therefore they can't file anything, but.
That's right.
But the question I'm asking, I guess if it's, I'll just have to read the bill, because if that was blowing, then that would be different than a nuisance. It would be trespassing under the environmental laws.
It could be. If a guy's not taking care of his manure in a proper manner,
Right,
he could still be sued or whatever.
right. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he's going to be operating under normal farming procedures, which is determined by the Department of Agriculture and Food, which we have hundreds of laws on the books of what that entails.
Mr. Palmer, I recently heard that Mayor MacArthur in St. George had declared Washington County not an agricultural county.
Well, that's interesting. I
Haven't heard.
I haven't heard that. I know Dan. I don't know if he's, I always kind of thought he was kind of for rural heritage, maintain as much as we could, but I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
2 minutes left.
Okay. Anyway, if you have any questions, I would be more than happy to work with your planning and zoning commission and the mayor, you as mayor, your city council members, your town clerk.
Yeah, that's where our process would start, is
Start
planning
that.
commission.
And then if you'd like me to come back to help you in a work meeting or whatever, I can sure do that. So,
That would be great. Yeah, if you make sure we have your contact information, that would be very helpful.
I'll leave it right here for you.
Get you started. Yeah, these are the filing fees associated with an ag protection area. This is just a example of Payment City's ordinance. You wanna, I didn't make too many copies of that, but you can give that to your clerk.
Thank you.
And this is the title 17 right here. If you'd like to have it, I'll go.
Yeah, I'd like to read it.
You guys can take it. I won't bother you anymore.
Do you want to take these back with
Yeah,
you?
you betcha. Yes, sir.
Sorry about that.
My number's on there on that 31st page,
Oh,
right there. So if you'd like me to come back and help you get one, and if you decide to implement this ordinance, we can do it.
Email address?
P.O. box.
No email?
Oh, yeah. I should call some calls, but I didn't. So. That's nice, D-Y-C-E, Palmer. Let's see.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate you. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
That's your wake-up call, right?
That was 15 minutes.
Okay, item number 10, we have a presentation by Denise Allen pertaining to Tree City.
This is my first time ever having to do this, so I'm a little nervous, just so you know.
Just relax.
Okay. I become part of the beautification committee with Loanne Barnes. And before I got started, she talked to Bannon from the Forest Ranger, and we was talking about, she found out about Tree Cities, and thought that it might be a good thing to implement here in Leeds. I did some things, and I checked out some information on it. And you might want to ask yourself, why now, after all these years that Leeds has been here, why do we want to become a tree city? And maybe nobody really knew about tree cities before, and it's just finally taken time for somebody to find out some information about it. But there's a lot of benefits to being a tree city. One of the benefits is that it brings more people into the city because you have a big sign and it's broadcast worldwide to let people know that you are a tree city, so they're going to come in to see your beautiful trees. Also, it's a great way to implement the children around here. My idea is to get a lot of the kids involved in planting these trees, and like have each of the scout groups be responsible for a tree, each of the young women groups being responsible for a tree, and it gives them something to do and keeps them kind of idolized and help take care of the city, which I think is a good thing to get them involved in. It will provide a much needed shade in our town. Our town gets very hot in the summer. We have a lot of runners or walkers that go up and down our streets, and especially from like town hall up towards the post office, there are hardly any trees whatsoever. And that walk, personally, I know, gets awfully hot, especially in the summer. And so if we could line our streets with trees, that gives us a lot more shade and makes it a little bit nicer for the runners out there. They're not gonna get so hot. Our park doesn't have a lot of trees. It has them along the edges, but that doesn't still provide a lot of shade. And now you're thinking, okay, what is this gonna cost? Well, they consider $2 per person per capita. But every time somebody works on a tree, they count their hours. So if an 8-year-old, even an 8-year-old goes out and waters the tree, cleans the weeds around the tree at the bottom, they're getting paid $20.50 an hour. So if we have all these people out taking care of their trees every day, if we rent a backhoe to dig the holes for the trees, that's $50 an hour. So with 740 population, it's approximately $1,500 a year. We'd have no problems coming up with that money in our labor, just by using people. So it really wouldn't cost the city anything. One things that they do recommend is that you have an Arbor Day celebration. It was mentioned to me that maybe Wild West Days, to coincide Arbor Day with Wild West Days, would be a good time to do it. We could have both. The nice thing about this is the forestry will send guys out with booths, and they will teach the town about what kind of trees to plant that won't need a lot of water, that will grow really nice, big shade trees, grasses that don't need a lot of water that will look nice, plants that don't need a lot of water, and the ones that survive naturally, so we're not bringing in unnatural plants and trees into our area. And so not only are we gonna have a plaque, a sign, bring people in saying we're Tree City, but we're also gonna be taught what to plant in this area. Yes?
Is this the group that's out of Nebraska City, the home of the arbor, is that where this organization?
This is actually worldwide.
So,
It's everywhere.
so help me out in understanding, so if we contributed the money, like $1,500, and then that money goes to the people who work? or
So,
that's-
no, what it is our working is considered, they count our working like $20.50 an hour. So they just add up our hours that we put in. So there's not actually any money exchanged.
Okay, I understand.
It's just, yeah,
It's in kind.
yeah.
Okay, thank
It's in the credit thing. So, and I have no doubt that we can
you. Right.
do the $1,500 a year. Okay, and this is a yearly thing. Every year we have to have the Arbor Day thing, but if we entail it with the Wild West Days, it kind of fits right in with the situation and the perfect timing.
Thank you for allowing me to interrupt you.
Oh, sure, no problem. Everybody around us is already a Tree City. Tokerville, Laverkin, Hurricane, Ivans, and, you know, all through the nation, but that, just around us, everybody's already a Tree City. Not that that means we have to become a Tree City, but it just, personally, think it would be nice for the shade. And also to get another activity for our children to do in the area. I think that's all I have on there. Any other questions?
The Tree City, they provide the trees to plant? or-
Actually, they don't. Luann Barnes is going to provide the first set of trees. She's already purchased them, and she's waiting for them to be delivered, so she would provide the first set of trees. My idea to get other trees would be to like maybe do fundraisers. I love to do fundraisers, so that's not a problem, bake sales, stuff like that. I'm involved in scouting, so I learned a lot about fundraisers. I think that's a good way to buy trees. A lot of times, some companies will donate trees just because they want you planting the native trees in your area. And so we can have contests, so even if we don't get a lot of trees every year, we can have contests to where, you know, whoever wins the contest, they get the tree to plant in their yard. So I've thought of several different ways to earn money to purchase trees.
Do the trees have to be a certain size initially?
What we want to do is just get trees that are native to our area. And they don't have to be a certain size, we just want the ones that are native. We don't want somebody bringing in something from California and trying to grow it here. We want our native trees. And I have a whole list of all kinds of different trees and plants that can be grown in this area.
The BLM has a thing that for $45 you get 150 trees.
Yep, something like that. There's usually a list of 10 different trees that they will provide.
Yeah. And Dwayne gave us, Dana gave me a list of probably almost close to 50 trees and plants that can be grown in this area. So I have several things to start with. Any other questions?
You have a copy of what those requirements are that Brian gave you?
Yes, I do.
We can keep this, right?
Yes.
Send that down.
Yeah. So, any other questions?
Do you have a phone number or?
It's on the front of that paper I just gave you, name and phone number,
Email,
is PASCALIROSE
Thanks, Denise.
Pascal
you.
Rose,
Pascal Rose,
so it needs an E after the L
an
then?
I.
An I.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, now you're gonna shuffle them. I'd expect you to fall asleep reading this one now. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna move on to item number 11, which is a presentation by some students that were brought in through a group called Form Tomorrow that have been doing a trail study from Silver Reef, potentially from Silver Reef historic area down to the Adams House, Harrisburg area. And I'll turn that time over to Michelle, whomever you are. Oh, very well.
Where are you guys from?
We are from all over, actually, but most of us are from students, from students from Rhode Island, studying at Rhode Island School of Design. This is George, he's from UMass Amherst. I'm sure you've seen us bumping around, see a lot of familiar faces.
So
And,
this is a project that you're doing throughout the United States, South America, North America?
no, actually, this is a unique opportunity where we were invited by a group of town citizens who were interested in the area and thought that we might have a unique perspective and we'd be able to come in and make some recommendations for the trail. So it's,
So are you an organized group?
yes, we're organized through Form Tomorrow, which Peter Stemple is back there.
Okay,
He's
I was
the-
here, I heard this.
Yeah, he's the lead architect and we're interns basically with his
Ah,
firm.
that's the word.
Yes.
It was coming somewhere.
We just provide a nonprofit framework. They do all the hard work.
Yeah.
I know it's nonprofit.
Peter, I thought you were just making the assignments and then torturing them by making them follow through with their assignments.
That's pretty accurate.
No, Peter's been a wonderful
I
guy.
figured they weren't the rainbow group. Yeah.
And so our presentation tonight is, this is our 8th of 10 weeks, so it's coming to a close. We really wanted to show what we've done so far, but mainly focus on sort of the experience that you have along this trail and the sites that we've chosen and why we've chosen them and sort of information. At the end, you're going to provide some pamphlets and presentation materials that can be used to raise funding and apply for grants so that the trail can.
You're right.
He wants to talk to you, Mike.
Yeah, this mic right here will work.
Okay.
People will be able to hear you better. You can pull it out or pull it right up to you, whatever you want to do.
So as Carl already mentioned, we're kind of talking about the Leeds Creek Trail rather than just a heritage trail. We wanted to kind of make it more inclusive and talk about the geology, the history, and the ecology of this area. So our mission really was to combine these three kind of elements. So as I had said, the history, the ecology.
Would it be possible for you to use a microphone?
Okay, yes, I'll crouch.
You can use it.
Oh, that would be easier. Okay. So I was talking about the history, the ecology, and the geology, and our goal was to combine these into a network or web that provided a unified experience from the Wells Fargo Museum down to the Adams House. This is a context map, and so kind of at the lower or the southern portion, Carl is showing with the mouse. That's where near Harrisburg, that's where the Adams House is. And then the Wells Fargo Museum is up in the northern portion in Silver Reef. And so this is just an overview of our trail system in relation to St. George and the Red Cliffs area, the National Forest, and Hurricane.
Michelle, the Adams House is the one visible from the freeway as you're in the Harrisburg area. It's over on the Red Cliff side of the freeway.
Okay. So when deciding what sites we would use, we came up with these criteria. So we wanted the sites to have cultural, visual, and contextual significance, to also fit into the continuity of the site within its network, and that the site was preserved and intact. And so the users that we were looking at were hikers, and we wanted to provide a variety of trails. So some for easy hikes for families, and then other more adventurous, maybe rappelling hikes for adventurous people or extreme hikers. And then ATV users is something that we'll address later as well, but we've kind of come across some issues with private property and the lack of access that we have, but we'll talk about that at the end. Mountain bikers, we looked at what kind of trail system mountain bikers require and the slopes and the general terrain needed for biking, and horseback riders and their desire to be away from ATVs. And this is the trail experience.
Okay, so here is an overview of our trail. You can see with the red.
Okay, I'll do it.
All right, great, thanks. You can see the trail, as Michelle mentioned, runs from Silver Reef down to Harrisburg, and we've picked out a number of sites that we felt were significant to telling the story of the White Reef, both again from the historical, cultural, and economic or geologic viewpoints. And the first one.
Could you use the microphone?
Yeah, sorry. So the first site that we felt many people would be departing from would be the Wells Fargo Museum. This has visitors from all over the world, in fact, and this could be a wonderful way to integrate with the artifacts within the museum, so people can actually go out and see larger things that relate to the history within the area. And then this is a animation that, oh look, it works, great. So there is the Wells Fargo Museum, there on the map, the red dot that just filled in, our departure point. And so this is also a little animation that we put together, kind of giving you a first look into what it's like to be there. Now we developed a cemetery loop. There's a couple of cemeteries. There's a Protestant Catholic, and there used to be a Chinese cemetery. This is a easier loop that could one day be ADA accessible and is much shorter and easier to hike if people were more interested in just the historical side of the trail and the interpretive work, rather than actually going through and hiking back by the White Reef. Here's an animation of that as you move along. You reach the first site, and there we go. A view of the Catholic cemetery and its surrounding area. And the Protestant cemetery. What's interesting about these is they talk about the segregation that occurred along political and cultural lines, and racial even with the Chinese cemetery. And it's an interesting aspect to our nation's and Silver Reef's history.
The microphone's directional. Will you make sure to hold it up?
Hold it like this.
There you go.
All right, there we go. Excellent. So this is also a significant mine that is along that trail that has scaffolding and other mining structures that we can use to tell the story of the mining that occurred in this area without having to go back into the Silver or the White Reef. And that would be there. Okay, and moving up from the cemetery loop, we've had some issues with gaining access into the White Reefs, and we want to respect private property and not trespass on this land, so we decided to move up through the Dixie National Forest and come down and enter the White Reef that way. And so you can see, as you come up, you would depart at that parking location and continue along the way. So this is some images back along that trail. It's really quite beautiful to see. Yeah, these are sites along the way that give you a sense of what it's like to be within that area. This is the canyon. That's Fox Canyon there.
Is that where you come down?
That's one potential way. You have to have rappelling equipment, so that's not the way that we're proposing.
That's what this little trail that we're talking about
Yeah.
right now, called the Red Cliffs Wash in our plan. As you can see, you kind of have to hop down like 8 feet several times, so this would be an extreme trail.
Beautifully sculpted sandstone, but difficult hike. Which is that right there. And so this is an overlook, looking out over the White Reef, and you can see Leeds, and really, it's quite a beautiful vista. Which would be around there. Okay. And this would be Box Canyon, which again is not part of the trail, but is sort of a side excursion for individuals interested in that particular. Which is not actually right there, but moving right along. And so as you exit Fox Canyon, you enter Fox Canyon Wash. We did propose a section that would have to be constructed that comes down off of that trail and follows a gentler slope down into Box Canyon Wash. And so that's something that we had to work with the Forest Service to get that implemented. So the first, or I guess second of our major sites is what's been called Helltown, where the Leeds 5 stamp mill was. And we would use this as an opportunity to talk about the mining and processing that occurred in this location. And there it is. This would actually be a spur off the trail. And then Michael's house, as you walk along, this is an opportunity to talk about, again, the relationship between geology, history, and ecology. There is an interesting anecdote where miners would have ring-tailed cats that are native to the area because they didn't have actual cats, and they would have these semi-domesticated animals to actually capture and kill vermin, and they would sort of hang out by the fireplace. And so it's an interesting relationship that we can talk about with that. and also where the sandstone came from as it came out of the mines, more often than not. And so, again, it's all about creating that, that network between these different activities and contexts that exist back there. And that would be right there. And this would be, as you would approach it, there would be the site, we would have some interpretive signage or other ways to convey information. One idea was to have like the ring-tailed cat's paw prints, like maybe set in concrete around there, just a small little thing so that you can get, it could be used as a tool for, again, conveying information. And then you eventually cross the Leeds Creek, and this is a unique area ecologically, and it would be a chance for people to stop and rest in the cool shade next to the cool water and learn about why this is such an important site. And that would be the rest stop as you cross the river. And as you leave the riparian area, you would eventually come up on top of the White Reef to look out over the landscape, and this would be an opportunity for us to talk about the geology that shaped this unique region with the sandstone, with the silver and sandstone, and also the beautiful red cliffs. And that would be, you would come up along there. And you can see out on both sides of the White Reef as well. So this is a spur off of the main trail where you can go and visit the petroglyphs. There have been some mixed feelings about exposing this site. However, there is a lot of graffiti, and so the general consensus is that bringing more people to a site like this would actually invoke self-policing, so that there's always that risk of somebody coming along and seeing you defacing these important cultural landmarks. And so we see this as a way to actually help preserve them and impart knowledge about the people that were once here. And that would be there. And we would also like to tie into existing sites. This is a site that BLM has already provided interpretive signage for that we would place along the trail. This is ruins from the ancestral Puebloan, or the Anasazi. And that would be a stop along the way where you can, again, understand the many layers of history in that area. Which, as the trail goes along, there it is. And you see that the trail is actually split off into two. You can go on either the east side of the White Reef or the west side towards the Red Cliffs Recreation Area. And eventually you come upon dinosaur tracks, which you can see there is a little bit of signage for, not a lot. Really kind of a unique find for, well, not terribly unique, but very interesting nonetheless, with there being some in St. George, and definitely we talk about that here. And then this eventually ties into the Red Cliffs Recreation Area, which they're actually, the BLM is trying to pull people out of there because it is such a heavily used site that we see this as a way to get people to sort of hike along and experience more than just the recreation area. And there it is. And finally, on to the Adams house. Oh, sorry.
I'm just curious, why was the Cobb Mine stricken from one of your sites?
The Cobb Mine falls upon private property.
Oh.
And so we were unable to have that in our trap. And so the Adams house, definitely one of the historic landmarks in the area. It has interpretive signage and it's a great ending point for our trail. It also has convenient parking for trailering, biking, and hiking. Even bathroom, I believe, yeah. And there's the parking area. Pull-throughs for trailers and plenty of parking available. So this would be one of the two ends, one being up by Wells Fargo and the other being down here, so you can really approach it from either side. And you finally end there. And so the implementation of this trail.
So one of the things that we were kind of asked to do was kind of look at how many trails are in the area and which ones should be improved so that they can become significant trails and which ones are redundant or unnecessary. So we kind of had these criteria when deciding which ones to keep open and then which ones to close. So we wanted trails that were engaging and informative on the history of the valley, that represented the character of the area, and that were accessible. And we wanted to close ones that were redundant or detrimental to the ecology of the valley. So this is a map that shows which ones we plan on improving upon and which ones we want to close. So the orange, well, that is a constructed trail, that red, dark red color that Carl is pointing out. And you can, there are a couple of other spots. That's the cemetery loop. That's to the petroglyphs. That's connecting a loop through the dinosaur tracks and the main trail. And then the other little dashed line that's orange are trail closures, where we thought that it would be better to just focus more of the energy into one area and not have such a network of dead ends. Oh, you have to go. And then the purple dots are existing trails that we would be keeping and utilizing in our system. Yeah, and these are recommendations to the BLM and the Forest Service. And then we had mentioned earlier the issue of ATV access into the BLM strip that, or in between the White Reef and the Red Cliffs. It's surrounded right now by Dixie National Forest, which doesn't allow ATV access into it. And then the Red Cliffs Conservation Area, which also doesn't allow ATVs into it. And then private property. So currently, ATV users are, they go in one of two places, but they're both technically on private property. It's just that there's no fencing right now, but technically it's trespassing. So we don't feel as though we can recommend any trail that utilizes those access points because they're not, well, they're not legal. So just as a, what? Oh, yeah. So possibly if some land acquisition was acquired, maybe access could be allowed through maybe Harrisburg or maybe through Wells Fargo. And then there could be a loop within, in between the White Reef and the Red Cliffs. But right now, it's all private land with no access.
Question.
Yeah.
So are you recommending the ATV access? Or are you saying that it's not possible?
It's not possible as of right now. We've looked into different access points, and it's really a surrounded bit of land. Yeah, we've talked about dedicated easements, but with the private, do you want to talk about this? With the property owners, and nothing has been written over yet, so.
In your evaluation, and you guys are doing a great job, by the way, did your research tell you that it should be a shared use trail, or would you look at multiple trails for preferred uses based on terrain or conflict on the trail or those sorts of things?
Are you referring to like horses, bikers, and hikers?
All of it.
Or,
Yeah.
yeah, we have different, we've separated them out. I actually don't think that we have a map here today that actually shows those different routes. A lot of them do use the same main spine, but some spurs would have bikers or hikers on them, and then others wouldn't, so.
And the majority of this is just identified existing routes that have occurred accretively over time, and except for those ones identified for construction.
Yes, mainly.
Question, are bikers using the trail you've identified today? Did you run into people out there on bikes?
Yes, actually, several people in our group have used the trails out back there,
So
so,
they are basically open to use now?
yes.
There's some areas that have designated signage already for mountain bikers as well. So there's sort of an extension of that. There's also some of the areas that we're recommending that are impassable by bikers, so you would, that would fall into the category of hiking on the terrain.
Bob, there's an existing trail that officially begins in the Red Cliffs National Conservation Area called Prospector Trail. Yeah, okay. It's widely published on the internet that people will start in Silver Reef and ride through that valley and then connect down in Red Cliffs. So there's a lot of mountain bikers that come through there.
But I just didn't realize that Prospector, once you get to the campground, you can continue to go north on it.
Not officially, but it makes for a fun ride.
Well, unofficially, it's part of what's called the Silver Reef Loop, and people will go up through Pine Valley and then come down Broken Mesa or Ice House and make it. How long's that?
About 50 miles.
Yeah. So it's an ultra endurance loop.
So the mountain bikers would also have to cross private land.
No, because mountain bikers are allowed into the forest and into the Red Cliffs and the CA. So kind of what's hatched in that line that goes diagonally is showing where ATV use is restricted and private property. We did not cross any private property in this trail plan. So bikers and horseback riders and hikers can all go through the conservation area and the wilderness area.
May I interject?
Yes.
I would encourage the town to be looking at somehow preserving access to the existing dirt road that leads into that valley, preserving the ATV access that people enjoy, even preserving foot traffic and hiking. Because currently that's where the majority of people are, but if that property owner wanted to put up a fence, they very well could. Yeah.
Joe, I think, I'm Glenn Zumwalt, part of the trail committee. That access that goes by the big shaft.
Yep.
It's been used for a lot of years. There is a state provision that access that does go through private property, that accesses other properties, and is used for 10 consecutive years as automatically as a right of way. And we use that in Sanpete County in our access committee. They've used it in a lot of other counties. So that needs to be researched and thought out. It was part of what we would come back on their recommendations and how to preserve some access over
I was told it was a county road.
there. If it is on the county road system, you won't have to do anything else.
Well, we met with the private property owner, and he does not believe that there is any easement, either
Doesn't have to be.
prescriptive.
Doesn't
Well,
have to be.
okay.
It's automatic.
Well, he's actually fought with
Yeah.
the county over, what you're talking about is a prescriptive easement, and that's what he's been fighting, and so currently, as it stands, on his deed, there are no easements that are listed, prescriptive or
And I
otherwise.
think I think what you did is very appropriate to not not show access across his land, because I don't think that, you can't do that in your process. But I think it's something that the town, like Joe's mentioning, be working on to try to make sure that we identify that an access over there that would be appropriate for the public.
Absolutely. And we're not hostile to having ATVs back there. We've had separate trails. I know that was a concern earlier.
Well, ATVs or a Jeep or even a SUV can get over there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's been accessed, and it's been accessed by the mountain bikers and hikers and everybody else that way.
Yeah, we had earlier trails that did use that access point, but when we met with the private property owner, he told us that there was no easement, so we shifted our trail design.
And there are also, there are other alternatives as well. There are different people who are, different organizations who would be able to help acquire or to help gain access to land like this. And we've talked to a couple of them, but there are other possibilities as well besides prescriptive easements.
Yeah.
The other thing, which I'm gonna just mention really quickly, is that these guys were charged with coming up with a trail that you guys can implement and make happen now. And by steering clear of the controversy there and not doing something required along, it doesn't foreclose the possibility of opening that up at some point in the future. But what's most important is what you're seeing on the wall and all this work can happen, and it can happen starting tomorrow, because there's no political obstacles to any of this going forward.
That's a terrific segue to how this could be implemented.
So this is a very boring Excel worksheet right now, but this is kind of roughly how we see the trail being phased in. So in phase one, it's more of the conceptual design phase, and that's what we've been working on. So coming up with the different criteria, the interpretive sites, identifying where the trail actually should be put, meeting with the different owners, so BLM, the Forest Service, private property owners, and then designing the trail experience, and then as you get down further, comes in funding and the app development, which is an additional portion, which we'll talk about in a second. And then finally in phase three, the construction of the trail. And we see this happening on multiple levels. So metal stakes are very easy to put into the ground to let people know where the trail will go and what trails will be closed off. And then other things could be added later. So boulders that restrict different user groups, revegetation of some of the closed trails, and then improvements of different parts of the trail, creating bridges, signage. So it's all laid out there. Do you want to read it?
Sorry. I didn't hear, maybe, did you have listed whether there was an environmental assessment that either the BLM or Forest Service or both are going to require for those, particularly the newly constructed sections, or?
Yeah, and the bridge development would have to have an environmental assessment done as well.
And do you have a time frame set in there based on your discussions with them?
No, they mainly told us that things work themselves out.
They will.
To not worry about that part of it. And then this is, oh, you want to go?
My name's Daniel. So I'm here to talk about, alongside of our physical mapping work, we've been also doing a bit of digital stuff, and we're hoping to propose an app, a phone app for smartphones and iPhones in the future for this trail. These are some preliminary ideas. We're working with Dixie College, and also Silver Reef Museum in developing this project, and these are some first conceptual ideas. Having myself done some of the, for example, documenting on Excel some of the signage sheets for the Silver Reef Museum. I found it easier for the app itself to have a signage sheet, and the signage sheet itself could be digitally managed and could tell us, could help us keep track of all the visitors, people coming in from where, groups or couples or singles, around what time of the year. So these are, that'll be slide 2 and 3 in the middle. So alongside that, we're also been thinking of possibly advertisement for the app itself. Will people be getting here and finding out there'll be an app and then signing in, buying, either downloading the app or purchasing the app, or beforehand they'll even get here, they'll know about the app, download it beforehand, and the app will have directions on the second part. The second little button says not here yet, have directions towards the trail and getting to the trailheads. And the last one on the right will just be the main page, and so this idea of the 3 users, and clicking on the 3 users will help you differentiate the trails between which users use which trail. This is just an example of sort of, for example, if you want to look at wildlife, and we're hoping to have numbers at specific site locations on the site that have common sort of sightings of these animals. So once you come to these sites, you can write in a number. For example, if there's a sign that says 38, you type in 38 on the phone app, and you have an introduction and sort of a brief summary of the ring-tailed cat, for example, on the right. And this will be just a preliminary sort of idea of that. So if we're coming to this ring-tail structure, you'll see a number 38, and once you type that in onto your iPhone app, you'll have an introduction of that ring-tail cat miners specifics and information. And the same goes for the map option. This feature sort of brings the whole map into context. It locates you onto the map. It tells you and will give you a notification within a radius or a distance of another site that you might be interested in or walking towards. And it'll pin you onto the map, and from there you can choose to select different sites or look into information of the sites before you even get there. Yes.
What about for people who don't have cell phones? Because there are a few out there.
Right. Obviously there'll be maybe some pamphlets. We try to obviously to save necessarily one paper using before, but there will be physical signage alongside with the digital stuff.
This questions page, it's blank.
Lights?
Question. It looks like most of the trail goes over BLM ground. All right. So,
Yeah, and Forest Service.
Yeah, some for, are both agencies, particularly BLM, that are supportive? I mean,
Yeah.
They're on board?
We've had many meetings with BLM, going over the different trail options so far. Yeah.
And the NCA within the BLM,
Mhm.
we've met also with Moshe and the Forest Service.
Yeah. So.
We're presenting this to them tomorrow.
Sorry, I forgot to mention, for the app itself, we're also hoping to promote sort of the history of the Paiutes and the tribes back here and the history. And then we also have physical recorded videos or audios of Paiute Indians who talk about the land themselves and have their part of the stories be told from their point of view and not from ours.
As well as other, like history and ecology, it's not just.
We've interviewed geologists and also local
Use of different education themes.
What I'd like to know, is, did you take a cell phone, is there cell phone service all along the trail? So existing, no new towers or new
Right.
Yeah,
And
most of.
there's some places where it's a little bit low, but what can happen is when you go visit the trailhead at either end, you would see information on how to obtain this on your phone, and you can download it, and then once you're on the trail, you don't need the cell phone service, and it would be information already.
And I'll just say, it's really interesting, these guys brought the concept of the app in, and I think it's a really important thing, and we've done some work in other communities. We did a group last year did a dispersed camping study, and one of the things that we found when we did the surveys around the dispersed camping studies, that increasingly visitors to the area are making decisions about what they're going to do, where they're going to visit, based on their web and their social network and what they see. They're finding out where to camp and where to go. And so doing something like this, while it might not appeal to all the people who are already here, who know this area, who might want a physical brochure, there are a lot of people who might decide to come to visit Leeds based on the availability of this kind of information. And the app becomes not only an opportunity to provide interpretation, it becomes a way to promote this heritage trail as part of the town, and really do, I think, one of the things that the town really wants to do is promote itself as a place that is a great destination for this sort of hiking activity and these sort of events, and bring positive attention to the town by way of stuff. So we think, wow, this is a really neat app. Look at all these cool things I can see here. And now I'm going to go check it out. And there's the map on how to get to Leeds and where to park and where not to go and what to do. And you've got some great people coming to your town. You know, hopefully that can be a two-way street, not just something to get when you get here, but something to get people here. And I think it's very appropriate for the time we're in. As a way to increase visitorship.
And also collaboration between towns, like the Dixie College coming in, and you know, the students there being able to participate in this and develop the app from the information that we've gathered.
And also with the mindset that this trail will lead to larger and connect to other trails, that this information for wildlife, geology, plants, and all that have more than just southern Utah. It contains all of Utah. And we looked at connections to Babylon Hill Road and some of the Babylon connections over there to that trail. And if we can get that connected in the future, it will be
You presenters introduced yourselves. Why don't you introduce the rest of your group?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
So we know who you all are.
Come on, Michael.
I'm Carla.
Daniel.
I'm George.
I'm Sam.
Michelle?
Carl.
Michael?
Desiree.
I have to say we have one of the best. I'm really very happy from a long relationship with Leeds. This is one of the best student teams we've ever had. And I'm incredibly proud of the work that they've done here in Leeds, and I really appreciate that you guys invited them here, because I think they've done a bang-up job, and I'm just really thankful for all the work they do. You guys did a great job.
And thank you for having us.
And also, in case you know, people didn't know, Deb back there is also part of
The fearless administrator without whom nothing would happen.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to item number 12. Yes, sir. Yeah. They're being polite. Now, these students, they're always polite, but if they want to get up and leave, they get up and leave. I mean, we're not going to keep them here.
The past couple of weekends have been very...
You may be here till midnight.
No, we're not going to be here till midnight.
Last time you said that.
We're not. Okay, last meeting we left off on dealing with the traffic mitigation plan that is presented by a Grapevine applicant. And we want to try and finish up and get an understanding of where we're at on that traffic mitigation plan. So Bob, I'll need you back up here. while they're getting settled. The students that I work with, you guys know that my hat's off to you guys. You talk about thinking of different avenues. When you think you come to a cliff, around here you come to some cliffs. I take my hat off to you guys and thinking out of the box in some ways to get around some items, issues that were there.
Well, you helped too, so thank you.
Okay, Bob, where we were stuck was on a level of service as we were looking at a road that doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the state of Utah. But for some reason, they'll allow us to determine what level of service that we would allow it to get to according to our developments and buildings here within our municipality.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's totally up to the town council to decide what, level of service you feel comfortable with, particularly Main Street. That's what we're really talking about, so. Let me start on this, the traffic mitigation plan that was submitted. And when you look at it, I just want to read one of the key sentences in the middle of paragraph 3. I think it's important to give some sense of Grapevine acknowledges that once the established traffic thresholds have been reached, the town may, in its reasonable discretion, withhold additional Grapevine building permits until the required improvements are made. For example, when traffic counts exceed, and they've got 11,800, but we'll talk about that. Exceed 11,800 trips per day on Main Street South, see table 1. No additional building permits may be issued to Grapevine until an approved traffic improvement is constructed that mitigates the additional traffic impact, which does not include widening Main Street. The town of Grapevine reserves the right to evaluate what the most appropriate mitigating improvement is for traffic impacts. As traffic counts approach, the threshold listed below. So we're talking about establishing that threshold for Main Street, at which time, obviously, it's, like we're talking, it's first come, first served. So it impacts the entire town. You're going to have numerous developments, Grapevine being one. We've got Silver Reef, Rick Sands project, and state trust lands, that's a development, but you're going to set a threshold. When that is reached, then the discussion ends, that's the end of building permits. So that doesn't have to be a hard decision today. You could say, we're going to go with, say, LOS, level of service C, which we talked about. And when we reach that, which I think under the Horrocks traffic study, that was 8,100 trips per day, as I recall. When that's reached, then the town will reevaluate the situation on Main Street at that time. But at least you're setting the word out that may in fact be the cap. But you're also reserving a little flexibility to reevaluate at that time. So, you asked at the last meeting what some of these level of service standards, how to relate some of those. Good thing Rick's here, he's a traffic engineer, I'm not. But it's interesting, there's some definitions which I won't go through. Obviously, A is the best and F is the worst, is failure. There's a little paragraph here that out of Washington City, St. George City, and Ivins, their transportation master plans. And whether they plagiarized each other or independently come to this, I don't know, but they've all decided that level of service C is the standard they're setting below which they do not want to fall. So when they're dealing with a new development, that developer would have to mitigate to at least a level of service C. That would be the requirement. And again, Washington City, St. George, and Ivins. Ivins has got some flexibility. They will consider on case by case, an L level service D. I could read the definition of.
One thing that's important to note on the recommendations that we have here is that we actually have vehicles per day.
The level of service comes, the most widely used level of service comes from the highway capacity manual. And they have a 2000 version, and then they also have a 2010 version. And it's basically the delay in seconds that you experience on the road, things like that go into it. That can change over time. There's also other levels of service that have to do with capacity, things like that. So we thought in the best interest of Leeds, include an actual vehicle count, so that in the future, when it comes time, there's definite, yeah, you can go out there and count vehicles and come up with a number, as opposed to, now what level of service were they actually talking about back then?
Because my concern is more along the lines of what's it gonna be like backing out of your driveway on Main Street? And, you know, in theory, a level service, I-15 has a level service today, right? So if we have great traffic flow but there's 10,000 cars coming back and you can't get out of your driveway, that would be a concern.
And Bob, you were gonna give us a comparison of a street that we'd be familiar with in St. George, Washington, that is a level of service C for approximately 8,100 trips per day.
Yes, and obviously, the examples I come up with, and I asked our traffic engineers, and one of our traffic engineers, Bonnie Thurber, who gave me these examples. Now, obviously, these are well beyond 8,100 trips per day, because most of these are 4-lane or 5-lane streets. So
It's important to note, I don't know how well these will work, but it's important to note that as you add lanes to it, you also increase the number of cars that can go on it while maintaining that level of service. For instance, if you look at, we just finished the intersection study for Telegraph and Green Springs in Washington, or 3050 East and Raycliffe Drive, depending on if you're going off of Washington or Savior City Street. It's operating at a level of service C, but it has multiple lanes in all directions, including turn lanes, and so obviously it's going to see a lot more cars and still have a level of service C than, if not, than 2-lane road. I think it's important to note that the level of service volumes that were presented here aren't based on it staying as 2-lane.
Okay,
Yeah.
so an example would be 7 South in St. George. What's the road count on that?
well, it varies depending on, you know, whether you're talking the east side or west side. But here's 700 South Street from 400 East to River Road. The counts roughly change from 21,000 vehicles per day to 29,000, and that's roughly a level of service C.
But again, that's a 4-lane section.
Yeah.
That's a, yeah.
So the 2-lane section,
section.
from 100 East to 200 East has 9,000 cars.
And they've got a stoplight.
You know, and I'm thinking.
So that would be level C.
That'd be, that's part of the 8,100.
Possibly getting into level of service B.
See, that road's dangerous,
Yeah.
flat out dangerous.
What was the road count again? Do you remember?
9,000.
So we're real close to that 8,100 that
I was thinking,
proposed.
I think an example on it, it's top of my head, I have Dixie Drive South, Dixie Drive in St. George, as you, south of Green Valley, before they just recently improved it, was probably level service B or C. I mean, that was when it was a 2-lane road basically. Now, Grant just within the past few months, that's become a 4-lane road. Is that really about a B or C level in Dixie Drive?
Yeah, probably the 2-lane section.
Yeah, 2-lane section.
Yeah, I think the reason I bring up 7 South in the 2-lane section, single lane section each way, it's because I think that's a road that everybody's extremely familiar with. And it's a road I travel several times a week. That's quite, I mean, for the amount of kids and people walking on the streets, I mean, you just, matter of fact, I've had friends that live on 700 South. Matter of fact, still live there, but they can't, they couldn't, they lived there for, they retired now, but they've lived there for 20 years, and they used to back out of the driveway, and now they've got circular drives.
In determining the count, is there a randomness number that's selected that says we're gonna randomly select certain days of the week over a period of time? Or do we put a meter count out for a whole
Typically, you
week?
want to use midweek days. Weekends are typically used because they have unusual trips on them. You might get a lot of people going up to Oakville. Mondays and Fridays also can have unusual driving patterns, so what they typically would like to count is from Tuesday to Thursday, and then the longer the better, the longer the more
Or do they have
accurate.
to do that over a period of time, for example, to establish an average amount? Or do they just do it, like, for example, they just decide in November they're gonna do a road count, and do it on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday?
That's a good thing to bring up. If it depends on the agency, and if you're concerned about it, I'd say either you plan on conducting the count yourselves. We have counters that we've had up here in Leeds before we would study Silver Reef Road. We could put them out. We like to put them out for a week. It gives us a lot of data, it's a better idea. But if not, then maybe that's something you could add to the mitigation plan that clearly says based on an average of Tuesday to Thursday counts.
Because I'm thinking if we became an area where people want to come and hike and so forth, that we just had a presentation. And so we had heavy times of the year that would be where people would want to come here for the activity. That would be a fair time to really do a count. So that's what I was just wondering, if it's a standard time. So that
Especially in southern Utah, there is seasonal changes in traffic.
When you reviewed the traffic study that was done by Horrocks, what were your conclusions as far as Sunrise? As far as your conclusions and what you would recommend that would be agreeable for Leeds?
As far as with this aspect or the whole thing, or for this, the road out front here?
Specifically, it seems like we're hung up on a level of service that's sitting on Main Street. That's where
I
we seem to
think
be hung up.
this comments that we have here is something that we worked on with the planning commission, and I think that's reasonable and fair. Like Bob mentioned, it's very common for the level of service C. Our concern was, you've got different levels of service, so we have the vehicle counts in there. So that should protect the city or the town. So I think it's spot on. What's your thoughts, Bob?
Yeah, I think the level of service C as a point where then it's reevaluated, that no guarantees that anything's going to go above that. The 8,100 number comes out of the Horrocks traffic study, so that was their number.
And now you explained the last meeting, the level of service B, the traffic count on that was
5,800.
5,800.
Because presently, if I'm looking at my notes correctly, we have 1,700, is that the number right now?
Yes.
Rick, have you seen this one that was?
Bob, can you give us an example of a road that's a level of service B? That would be familiar with?
And you're talking a two-lane street.
A two-lane street, would that be 100 going south there in St. George?
Well, let's see, south,
You're gonna be hard pressed,
that's much,
with St. George roads, just because per block they have such varying. For instance, if you go back to 700 south, it's got a low block of 9,000, but you go to the east side and you're up to 29,000. You go to the west side and you can get up to 17,000. So I mean, it's hard to say a certain street Four Master is about 10,000. That's a very similar road. Maybe that. Yeah, so
Several times a day.
that's 10,000 is pushing level service D there. That's 500 probably about level service D.
Whereas like Valley View, it's a 4-lane pretty much. And it's,
And again, by adding those 2 extra lanes, and that's what was originally proposed when it was making it back to the 5 lanes, is that it would increase the capacity and then drop the level of service down. So that's why I'm kind of saying you're probably better off to go with vehicles, like the vehicles per day. It's something tangible you won't require. And as far as setting the capacity of roads to give it the level of service and looking at the delays, I mean, there's big long equations that talk about road width and the grade of the road, and if there's on-street parking, and if there's bus stops, you know, lots of variables, and then also the delays as different highway capacity manuals come out that change.
So what you just said, if I understand you correctly, is go by a vehicle number rather than an A, B, or C.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Four-Master's only got 2, take you down toward the hospital in most commercial areas, only got 2 main access going to it, and that's Four-Master Ridge on each side.
because at some point in the future, we might have a Main Street in portions where it's applicable, strike for a 3-lane, so that it would be a center turn lane. And yet we wouldn't, if we had put it 81, that wouldn't buff it up to 91 for the 3-lane at level C.
See, Four-Master's got a 3-lane between them and center.
Have we ascertained the number of available lots? For example, I think in my area, we have maybe 2 or 3 lots left that can be built on. So then in Silver Ridge Highlands, there's 27 or 29, there's about 6 or 7 houses, so there's X number of lots. And in El Dorado, I think there's still a few lots. So then if Rick Sant and Gary Crocker's property was built out in that first phase, if we would take that number and then same for these other developments, and then take what would be for, oh, you have the numbers.
I did that analysis to kind of help paint the picture. If I may have a minute, I can respond to your question.
Yeah, because I'd be curious to know if your development started out at those phases and we started having the other development coming about, if we chose a number that would be reasonable enough to, because well, I'd say enough if you want to, that's.
You know, the other thing that complicates that is, you know, if you had, say, a brand new nice Maverick store on one of the ends of Main Street, that is going to suddenly increase your traffic. You know, there's a lot of variables out there that could impact Main Street in the next decade.
Drake, go ahead.
Thanks. Let's go over to the mic so everyone's here.
I'm Drake Howell, representing Grapevine Development. I appreciate where the discussion's going. I think Bob said it well early in his presentation. Although Grapevine is the application, you know, on the table today, this notion of what Main Street wants to be or should be is a much broader town question and not just an applicant question. Because we own 360, 70 odd acres. There's people that own on the east end of Babylon Mill Road that own hundreds of acres. There's people that own hundreds of acres or a lot of acres on the south side of Main Street that remains undeveloped. There are property owners along Silver Reef Road that remain undeveloped. There are property owners that have pursued subdivision plats that are recorded but not built upon, to Frank's point. And so my rough analysis is this, and I really appreciate the questions because The town needs to consider this as a whole, is our hope. We want to contribute what we need to contribute based on our impact, but consider these numbers. This is scenario number one. Let's assume, just for this scenario purpose, that all of Grapevine property, instead of coming to the town as a cohesive master plan development, that our 4 property owners come in as onesies, twosies, just like all the other property owners around. You know, property Joe comes in with 40 acres and property Sally comes in with 60. Let's say we break up all of those 4 property owners. They're not connected anyway. They just do their own thing. They want to develop their property. And we assume that they have R110 zoning, which is allowed under the current Leeds ordinance, which is effectively a 10,000 square foot lot. Okay, roughly a quarter acre. And then add that to the current planned developments, which includes Silver Point Estates, Silver Creek Estates, and Silver Eagle Estates, formerly Arroyo Regal, plus the 1,700 or so existing trips on Main Street today. You are at 10,976 trips on Main Street today. Let's add a little more. Scenario 2, let's take that 10,976 trips on Main Street today, that's just normal single-family zoning, and add the vacant land adjacent to South Main Street across from Mayor Roberts' house in that general area. That bumps it up to 11,199 trips a day, effectively 11,200 in the current zoning. However, that property owner can come in and change his zoning to R110 zoning. If that's the case, you bump up to 11,622 trips per day on Main Street. Let's look at scenario 3, where we add those trips of scenario 2 and add all of the vacant land that is now undeveloped on the east side of Babylon Mill Road, which is the road adjacent to the town hall. If the current zoning is followed, that bumps up trips on Main Street to 12,560. If in some future date that property owner says, you know what, I want a little denser product than my current zone, I want to come in and apply for R110 zoning, that will bump up trips on Main Street to 15,939 trips a day. Let's add a last scenario, scenario 4, and add all of those single-family homes. These are not apartments, duplexes, anything, single-family homes. And let's add the land that's along Silver Reef Road that's in the town. There's quite a bit of land along Silver Reef Road that's in the county right now. I'm only considering the land that's currently annexed within the town of Leeds. And under current zoning, Main Street will be at 12,765 trips a day. If they opted to say, you know what, we want a denser zone and we want R110 zoning, 10,000 square foot lots, we are up to 16,788 trips a day on Main Street. So I think those types of numbers and those scenarios are very beneficial for the town to contemplate. I know we're the lucky ones right now because we actually have an application before the town for our master plan development, but in these scenarios that, let's just throw the whole master plan development off the side and just come in at R110 zoning, the town has some very important questions to answer regarding Main Street. So I hope that helps, Frank. I hope that responds to your question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that the town, and I'm quite confident that this group up here realizes this, but it is looking at the future of the town, and not just one individual development or one or two. It's potential areas that could develop, and landowners should be able to do whatever they want to do. If they want to fly kites out on 200 acres, that's what they should be able to do. If they want to divide it into the zoning that it sits in and governed by that, that's what they should do. So the potential is there of not only dealing with Main Street, but as Joe was talking earlier, you know, about an interchange. unless this town's way of thinking has just gone completely backwards. I know 8 years ago, that was the top of their list, a concern of an interchange. I can't imagine that we lost sight of that. I think it's probably been covered up with some cobwebs because we didn't keep it brushed off. But I think that's still a concern that we have as a town. We just happen to be dealing with an applicant that's before us that has the potential, and so I would agree with going off the numbers as the way that our engineers have presented it to us.
Now, Bob, couldn't we set a number? I mean, you mentioned we could change the number about any time, by taking it back to planning commission and city council. But we don't actually have to set a number as high as 8,100 at this point. And we're at 1,700 trips a day right now. We're talking 5 times both, and it's gonna take a long time for it to get to that point. So personally, I don't feel the necessity to set a number at 8,100 trips per day at this point, when that number can change. When we can see what the traffic does and how the town handles that.
You can set what number you think is appropriate for Main Street, that's your discretion. We're just suggesting that the level of service C is still generally a comfortable, according to the definition, generally still a comfortable traveling way. I mean, and that translates to about 8,100 vehicles per day. But you could do something less and then reevaluate it. You could be more, you could be cautious and say, we're gonna do 6,000 or 7,000. At that time, reevaluate the situation. Obviously, over time, the pressure is gonna grow and grow and grow as you get closer to that number, because then, at some point, development is maxed out. Until you get freeway interchange is probably the real scenario.
Yeah, the development's maxed out, and you can live with that if you just want to stop.
And it's kind of a catch-22, because UDOT's probably not going to consider an interchange here until you get
Absolutely.
cars there.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, getting a lot of cars there is not what you want to do, so.
As a traffic engineer, your knowledge of the subject, at 8,100 trips per day down Main Street, is that a safe amount of traffic that people are gonna easily be backing out of their driveways, or is that gonna be, you have to be looking over your shoulder, make sure you don't get hit?
Yeah, there's going to be a couple things to look at there. As far as safety, a lot of that's going to come down to the speed. You keep it posted at 25 miles an hour, 35 miles an hour, what is it posted at? For St. George City, I think they recommend anything over 30 miles an hour have a circular drive. You've got a home on you.
You wouldn't want to be backing out on the street, right?
So if your speed is up to 30 miles an hour, then yeah, you want another thing. The other thing to consider is the gaps in the traffic. Is this a steady stream that happens all morning long and then happens again all evening? If that's the case, then you'll be sitting there, and even though it may be going slow, you still don't have the gaps to back out into. So there's a couple issues.
Sure. Well, we're a commuter town, people are driving into St. George and coming home at night. So I would think that it would have higher traffic in the morning.
Yeah, and that's typically what you see happen. And I mean, 700 South's a great example of that, like, a lot of cars. There's a reason why everyone's going to circular traffic.
Yeah, I've actually have a family member that lives in an apartment complex down there. I guess not a townhome project down there that I stop and visit quite often, right across the street from that. And that just half a block down from that stoplight. And there's a lot of times because people pulling in and out of the beauty salon there and out of the police place there. There's a lot of times that, I'm sitting there 2 or 3 stoplights just to get out of the apartment complex to go left. If I was going right, it'd be a lot easier. But
So by reducing the speed limit, we in theory could have a greater number of trips a day to assist by mitigating some of those safety concerns. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, if you increase the number of trips, then you have less gaps, and so then you have more wait time. Typically, the longer someone waits, the more willing they are to shoot a smaller gap, and so then, yeah, your safety goes down. So a lot, unfortunately, traffic engineering all has to do with drivers' behaviors. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of factors that try to find.
So we'd have to move bus stops and whole works, we wouldn't have bus stops in now. Bus stops
And
in
you
now.
got other issues like, are there parked cars on the side of the road? By that time, do you have cars parking, or have you pulled all the cars off? All those issues. The other thing to keep in mind too is we're talking a long time in the future.
Yeah, and that's why I was looking at a lower number, and we've got a lot of time to work on it.
So, and also, another thing to point out, that how it works in other cities and how we work here, because Leeds Town has adopted some of these other ordinances, is it wouldn't just be Grapevines development, it'd be any development that came in, and if they said, oh, well, this road's a level of service C, I need to access this road to get to the development. Well, now all of a sudden, they're under the same requirements as Grapevine.
Yeah. And I haven't met Rick, but this will impact him. You know, basically, whatever number that we decide, but basically, first come, first served basis.
And I think, you know, that's how it's done elsewhere.
Sure.
It would be hard to, if we're gonna reserve these lots, they can do all these other.
Yeah, that isn't gonna happen.
I don't know that I like the idea of just arbitrarily picking a number that we all feel good about. I like to have some engineering behind it.
That's the numbers that our engineers have.
Well, I mean, the 8100, but I feel like 8100 is a number that's higher than I'd like to see the town, and like would wager that we take a poll and maybe get the consensus out there. So my suggestion would be, why don't we consider that level of service B, but conversely, the number associated with that was produced by Works Engineering, up to 5800. Which is effectively 3.5 times the current.
I'd agree with that, and like I said, as you said yourself, I mean, we're talking years in the future, and we've got a lot of time to get to a level of service C.
Yeah, the future town council can always change that, right?
And you're talking 3 times the amount of trips per day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a couple things. So item 1 is, you know, the offer for the, so instead of spending the money to widen out the street 5 lanes, take that money that they would have spent and contribute it towards possibly a match for an intersection at that point. The one thing we were just going to point out about that is that couldn't be, the impact fees can only be used on roads that are counted in the study that came up with the impact fees. So you couldn't collect that money for impact fees. So our question was, well, is that in addition to the impact fees, that would be a separate pot of money? Or how would that work? Would it have a timeline on it? And then exactly what improvements are they talking about? Asphalt, curb gutters, sidewalks, stormwater, and all that kind of stuff. The next item was the level of service D or C, which is the issue we just talked about. That was item 2. Item 3. Clearly stating no more building permits will be issued until the improvements are in place. Talking about what happens when you meet that threshold. And we never got a copy of the letter from the fire authority on if they're happy with the cross sections.
Excuse me, you did, Rick. I have that acknowledged by Russ.
Yeah, you did receive that.
And then the only, I think, we had some other items outside of the mitigation plan.
No, I want to nail this thing right here, right now. Joe, you're in favor of looking at 5,800 as
Yes.
the magic number,
Yes,
but not just pulling that out of the air, basing that upon a number that was generated as a level service fee.
Level of service speed, and that says a two-lane road.
This is not a big signature.
So it's a three-lane road, that actually bump that up to that no turn section, that actually turn that up to 6,300.
I feel good about that.
That was one reason why I think Rick was recommending a specific number rather than a specific level.
Yeah. Because there's so many factors that could go into
Yeah.
it, we don't know what is exactly.
You know, it's still a farming community, and until the town grows and more traffic, I mean, everybody still parks their horse trailers along the side of the road, you know. There's semi trucks, I mean, you just don't see it on 7 South. And as traffic starts to get heavier, you know, that'll continue to sell. But I'm with Joe on that 5,800 rail service B, but in that diagram that contradicts itself, whether it's a two-lane or a two-lane with a turn lane.
I think our policy ought to be that as the road is today, our cap for traffic ought to be 5,800. And then as spot improvements are made, we as a town can revise that number.
I agree.
What's your stand on that, Angie?
Definitely. Particularly since it can always be changed in the future, I think at this point in time, putting a lower cap on it, say 5,800, is the best plan.
Yeah. He had an emergency. From an engineering standpoint, does that sound reasonable? Now, from an engineering standpoint.
Level service is typically what you see down here. However, you know, I think it does sound reasonable that you're saying we'll look at it. At that point, we'll look at it. An important thing to note is a lot of times in these development agreements, they'll set a limit of 5 years. They'll set a limit of 10 years for the whole thing. And they'll say, hey, if we're not underway in this time, we need to readdress it anyways. Things change, you know, styles change, opinions change. So there's a good chance that we won't even hit this in the time. Now, I don't know what's gonna happen with if there's a year, time limit set on this development agreement, but I mean, there's talks a long way in the future. I would personally recommend that, yeah, you do set something, let's take a step back, look at it, just from the perspective of not, binding future councils. Agreements made now, but, so C is typically what you see, but I think where you're saying we address it, and even push it back to C, or push it back to where it needs to be. It's almost a little more of a political question, but.
Exactly. From your viewpoint, Bob, would you say, from the angle of a legal aspect, that's not being arbitrary and capricious when you?
Yeah, well, that may be legal, then we'll leave that one to Heath, but from I think, from what I understand, as a town council, you have the right to establish the character of your town, you know, and B, level service B protects the current character of Main Street more. And you're erring, or you're coming down on the side of maintaining the character of Main Street as a low volume street. The downside to a developer is it kind of it increases their risk. Suddenly, if you put yourself in this, whether it's Grapevine Wash or Sands or any other developer, suddenly you know that the town of Leeds when that street reaches 5,800, yeah, they're gonna reevaluate it, but there's no guarantee. And yet you're gonna spend a lot of money in putting a subdivision in, but there's no certainty that you're gonna get the number of units, you know, you're hoping to, you know, meet your basic payback. So it increases the risk fairly significantly, probably for the developer.
Well, they're gonna go in phases, Bob. I don't see them developing 350
Right.
acres on one shebang.
But they have to make huge upfront investments, right?
Yes.
You know, Grapevine, sewer systems, water systems, et cetera. And they're translating a 5,800 vehicles per day cap, and they're sharing that with whoever else, you know, develops in Leeds. And so suddenly, anyway, you can see the risk from a developer is up. But, you know, this is a discussion item, and we throw it out, and I guess the Grapevine Wash can consider that and come back with a response. But I think, you know, my understanding is clearly you have, as a town council, you have the right to determine what kind of character the town's gonna be, and that means streets as well.
And Bob, how does this fit in with the special zoning that they're going for? I think the whole reason why this is being looked at how it is, as opposed to being looked at as more traditional developments, that they are looking for approval of this, they are looking for approval of the whole kit and caboodle, which is why.
Yeah, they're on
these
there.
are being looked at.
Yeah, they're trying to get approval for their master plan concept, and the development agreement, you know, contemplates up to 2,500 vehicles, and they may only get, you know, a rather low number of that until the interchange, becomes reality on I-15, and nobody knows when that will be. So, you know, it's a tough question for the town, it's a tough question for the developers, because there's, you know, they've got to add that into their overall risk assessment that, you know, at some point, the permit's gonna come to a halt. You know, it happened in Sun River, and then St. George put a cap, now the only difference there was, Sun River was it was a single developer, and they knew they had a cap on Pioneer Road until that set mile to the new interchange came in. Where in this case, the cap now, you know, that capacity is spread among whoever, you know, first come, first served. And it's, I don't know, but I do think you have that right to make that call.
Well, I've only been involved in the political side of Leeds for about 7 months, but people long before us, I think, wanted to follow the same situation. That's why we don't have any lighting up Main Street. And that becomes another issue. We can start running that much traffic. And you start dealing with lighting up Main Street, don't you?
Yeah, a lot of things change with increased
So I'm
population.
just trying to accommodate the developers and preserve the integrity of what we have here.
I think, not to try to rehash it too much, but as it is right now, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but they've adopted St. George City ordinances as far as the traffic studies and stuff like that. So what's that about?
No, not the traffic studies, only the design and specs.
Okay, so
That's all
with the design specs, it calls out level of service C.
That's correct.
So if someone were coming in that wasn't in this kind of zone, just a plat, and and we would review it against a level of service C. So I think to probably be fair to this developer, if you choose that, hey, we're gonna look at things at a level of service B, then you probably wanna adopt something that would say everyone in the town needs to look at a level of
Absolutely.
service B.
Yes. Absolutely.
And not just this developer.
But it would be just Main Street, it would be Main Street levels.
Main Street, yeah.
Yeah, because how could we adopt anything to any of our other roads? Look at it. Level of service there.
Is Rick here? Rick's in.
He was, he's not here right now. I'm comfortable with what you recommend. Rick brings up an excellent point, and that means that the town is going to have to put some language in there, because we're not gonna treat any one developer any different than the next.
I agree. There's gonna be a lot of years before we ever hit level of service, say 5,800. And I think we wanna make sure it's in the language, Bob, that level of service B, that it caps out at 5,800. And out of the 6,300, the 3-lane. And you, if you know, on the same page.
Yeah.
You're on.
Right. Well, Val made a good point that, we don't know what future council might say. It would seem to me that it would only be reasonable in future evaluations, when they have several developments already going, to raise that, wouldn't it?
But at 5,800 trips per day, you're talking a little over half of what 7 South is doing with now street lights. And at that point in time, they may want to reevaluate. I don't know what other council will do.
So Bob, were you saying that that you thought it was more appropriate to really stay with the level C than going down to a level B?
Not necessarily, I think that's your call, I think you understand the differences, and so that's your call. A lot of, Representative Ivans, Washington, St. George have adopted this level of service C for their, most of their roads, but, you have to, the Leeds unique situation in the town. And then I think that's a discussion item, and maybe before, you get perhaps a public hearing or whatever, then the Grapevine Wash and the other developers could give any feedback, I guess, or input, then they will do what they want to.
I think whatever you go with, like Bob said, I think that, it's gonna be your call ultimately. I think if you do go with the level service B, then I'd say definitely make it a priority and be fair to everyone across the board.
Absolutely, we would do that.
Where it's two different review processes.
And I've had conversations with a lot of the town, and I actually was able to meet with Merlin before he passed away. And everybody's voiced their concern that the traffic was, the 5-lane highway was out, we decided to take that out. But the amount of traffic still going up Leeds Main Street was still their biggest concern. And why they voted me on, I have no idea, but I'll stick with their feelings, so.
Okay, so we're looking at the 10 recommendations that came from the planning commission. That was item number 4, that traffic mitigation plan. And at the last meeting, that was the only thing that we were hung up on, was that level of service or that traffic count.
Did the fee then get worked out as far as, is that still made, but there, that additional money
The road impact fee, oh, they were talking about the in lieu of.
Yeah, I don't even know if that, is that still in the latest draft of the
Yes.
mitigation plan?
Yeah, that they could do it.
It is.
Even in lieu of the impact fee.
Yeah, that's still a proposed.
And then what about the widening out stuff, is that still out there too? The paying the additional money that would go widening out?
The great, the applicant was proposing they were willing to do a lieu of impact fee. Number one is we can't collect an impact fee on it because it is a state road. And even if it was our road and we collected an impact fee on it, we'd only hold that for 6 years. So the applicant was suggesting in language in there's development agreement, that lieu of impact fee where it wasn't bound by.
Oh, so that's in the development agreement then?
That's proposed in the draft agreement.
Okay, because that was, all our comment was, is it wasn't clear in this, is that in addition to the impact fee, is that in lieu of the impact fee?
It's in lieu of.
It's in lieu of, so as long as that's listed somewhere, I was just saying, that might be kind of harsh, that, just from reading this, to figure out what it was.
We'll be collecting road impact fees on other roads in the town. This is just in lieu, we can't collect an impact fee on Main Street because it's not our road.
Oh, yeah, and that wasn't the issue we were having. It was just unclear on this, where it didn't say anything about in lieu of or in addition to. We were just saying, just reading through it, you might want to clarify it in the actual document. The fee that's talking about here will be in lieu of.
Yeah, and it's in that operator out there.
Is Main Street north of Silver Reef still a state road?
No. A state right-of-way ends just before you, well, right when you get to that first bend. The state right-of-way ends right there.
What first
As you come underneath the interstate and you're headed up Silver Reef, that first bend.
She's
I'm
talking,
thinking Main Street, North
Oh.
Main Street, because.
No, beyond where the on-ramp is, no, that's not a state road.
Because the road is in
It's county.
disrepair, and,
That's Leeds Road till we get to the county line.
well, could we charge impact fee related to that
Yeah,
section?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because that's going to take a lot of rework to handle
Yeah,
any real traffic.
that road is in our
Okay. I was
master road plan, and we do collect impact fees for that section as of today, right now.
So there would be impact fees charged for that, what, 1 mile section?
That's included with all of our other roads, yes. There's impact fees that are charged for all of our roads.
So it would be a general.
Yeah, general fee, and then that you can use it on that 1 mile portion. Whereas the law prohibits you from using impact fees on state or federal roads. So if it's a city road, you can use it.
And I think that's where that clause came in, was they're saying, hey, instead of us calling this an impact fee, we'll call it something else, which would give the town options on how it wants to spend that money, if you could spend it towards a match on the intersection. And I'm assuming that that's a East Snow question, I'm assuming he's looked at it.
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Or as far as what you can see, Bob, we're good on the traffic mitigation plan.
Yeah, we'll make those changes you suggested. I'll visit with Rick on this, and we'll come back with the next draft. We'll incorporate, I guess your suggestion at this point is the LSD and 5,800.
5,800, I think, is a number that we want to use.
We'll make that and bring it back to the next meeting or whatever you want to have.
Do we want to make that an action item for our next meeting, or?
No, it doesn't need to be an action item, because the action item is going to be the all-inclusive exhibits that go with,
So
that,
we could entertain that as one exhibit along with many others.
what was left off from the recommendations from the planning commission were the street standards, which we had next on the list, and also the maintenance responsibility for public streets and utilities. And considering the hour, because we do have an action item that we need to move on to, and even we will be going into a closed session tonight too. So with those things still pending, I suggest that we take that item 13, looking at the crossroads sections for Grapevine, put that into our next meeting, even if we have to, you know, I don't know, it seems like we get far more accomplished in a work meeting than we do anywhere else. But I'd really like to finish up in a work meeting on that development agreement, the draft part of it.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Just in light of how long this is taking, how little time we get at each one of these meetings, as an applicant, we would love to request holding a special meeting where we can have the time to discuss the remaining issues with council and have them come to consensus so we can have a response and do this in a timely manner. It's very difficult when we only have the time that we've had the last now 3, maybe more meetings to get into the depth that we need to and make some progress in a timely manner. So we would respectfully request that the town council schedule a special meeting even next week or as soon as possible, where we would make ourselves available to come and have this as the discussion.
Does your schedules allow? Ron, you got a question?
Well, I just have a comment, that is that we kind of plan our schedules according to your set meetings, because we want to participate also, and that does affect the people who want to come and participate, at least listen to what's going on. If you start skipping extra meetings, that puts a hardship on a lot of people.
Point taken, but if it's noticed according to Utah Open Public Meetings laws, that's what we're governed by for open use.
I'm not questioning legality, I'm questioning the wisdom.
Kent, is there a way that our next scheduled meeting, we can just withhold other items off the agenda? Let's focus on this issue.
Well, not on our next scheduled meeting. We have a public hearing. We have applicant before us with a preliminary plat and a final plat. It's quite extensive. Would you not agree, Greg?
Sounds like it.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So we have an applicant that's already on that schedule.
To answer your question on scheduling, I can make it work.
It's called time. Now, keep in mind, it was us as a group that said, we will go over these same items that the Planning Commission spent 3 months on, and that we would go over those same things, not just arbitrarily take their recommendations. And it means time. That's only for the recommendations. And it's an extensive one.
And we have the development agreement.
And then we have the
which spent
development
some time on in the work meeting, but still have several sections yet to review.
I think we can do that. I won't give you a time or a date at this point, but I think next week.
Thank you for considering it. We would
do that.
We would appreciate that. Thank you.
Keep it into consideration, at least school starts next Wednesday.
Starts next week sometime.
So, so without the first few days trying to create havoc on parents, now chasing school supplies and everything else, so.
Okay, and now I want to move on to item number 14, which is an action item. We've got a resolution. No, it doesn't need to be a motion. It's the 5-County Association Government's Natural Hazard Mitigation 5-year plan. When Trudy Law was mayor, she signed an ordinance that said that we would be involved in the 5 counties' natural hazard mitigation assessment, and they come up with this 5-year mitigation plan. You should have a copy of that in your folder. They're asking us to adopt that, a resolution that will adopt that mitigation 5-year plan update that exists. Okay. Thanks, Paul. They requested that resolution be adopted 2 weeks ago. Yeah, this is where it was highlighted. Back in 30 days, see the date. It shows in your packet, you'll have that mitigation plan, and then also in there is the agreement that was signed by a previous mayor that we would participate.
So, by voting for this, what are we committing ourselves to?
Whatever's on that agreement, which says that we will participate in that mitigation plan, the hazard mitigation plan. That's the one.
So, we don't have what plans to.
Yeah, it says,
No, the full one, it's very encompassing, like 500 pages. No, the discs are here. They're here at Town Hall. About 500 pages to go along with that. Which include soil issues, drainage issues, flood zone areas.
so this is, in a sense, just a continuation of the previous mitigation plan.
what are they gonna do to us if we don't sign the
I have no idea.
by their deadline? Because it's kind of hard to evaluate from what we have here.
So you wanna look over that?
Whether
I
there's a
don't have a
cost
problem
to
with
us, an obligation that we're gonna, you know, do these things, or just, you know, it's just public relations, if it's real or just for show.
I'm not even gonna comment on that. You're talking about government here. You tell me if it's real or for sure.
5 counties, based on the information I've been given, pretty good outfit. I don't even understand what we're agreeing to, so I don't know that
You should come in and look at those discs
I'm not.
and
gonna read
involve
400
yourself in.
pages.
It's 500.
Yeah, that's 500.
500 pages.
If you get through the first 400, I'll pick up that.
I read their executive summary, and it's essentially that we want a plan in place for mitigation of risks associated with landslides, earthquakes. They even threw volcanoes in there.
Yes.
There aren't any active volcanoes in southern Utah. Do we need a plan for mitigating risks associated with volcanoes?
They have one spring up in your backyard.
Yes, I'm sure there's lava around, there
See,
must
the
be a
logic
volcano
is
somewhere down
that
there.
is not a possibility.
Like I said, it's government.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. This is our tax dollars at work.
So what is the alternative if we don't?
Oh, they sent us another letter probably.
In bold type.
I won't go to jail, that much I can tell you. No.
Okay, like in chapter 3, it says prioritization methodology. And it has economic analysis. That would seem like that would be an area to evaluate before we sign something.
Okay, I do need a motion that we'll postpone this then.
I move that we postpone the 5 County Association's natural hazard mitigation plan.
Second.
It's been moved by Angie Rohr and seconded by Joe Allen to postpone the 5 County Association's National Hazard Mitigation Plan. Any further discussion?
I would say that this also entails a commitment on our part to at least evaluate some aspect of it, maybe not all 500 pages each.
Oh, I agree, yeah. Somebody better be proactive about looking at it. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we do need to go into a public, or a closed meeting. So I'll be looking for a motion for that.
Are we adjourning this?
No, we will not adjourn this one, we can adjourn this one, we'll go into later.
Okay.
We're going into a closed session.
Thank you guys.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Angie or seconded by Joe Allen to go into closed session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll see you back here. Yeah.
We do come back into a public meeting right after this, because we have to come back into a public meeting in order to adjourn.
We immediately adjourn thereafter.